welcome to the Jayda InStitches show. This weekend we've got 4 fun, fall-inspired crochet jewelry projects for you to try out. They range from a little challenging to super quick and simple, and they're using the folk art sunflower and folk art pumpkin patterns some of you might be familiar with if you did our folk art calendar blanket along with us a couple of years ago. So because we've already got the pattern and the tutorial all done up for the sunflowers and the pumpkins, we're going to link them in the description box down below and in the pinned comment. So whether you want to do sunflowers or pumpkins or maybe both, that's where you'll find the video tutorial for the actual pattern. And the best part about that is that we used nice sized yarn and a big hook for those patterns, so it's really easy to see the stitch work. So if you're going to downsize to make earrings, or maybe make it just a little bit smaller to make a pin like this, it's much more easy to see the stitches being carried out in those particular tutorials. So once again, they're linked down below. In today's video, we are going to show you how to turn those applique patterns into a cute set of earrings or a really simple pin. All of these make great gifts, if you ask my opinion, but in particular, the pins might be exactly what you're looking for if you want to make a little something up nice and quick for a group of friends, maybe it's a classroom gift, or you're hosting a party, it's got a fall-inspired theme, and you want a little something extra for the grab bag at the end of the party. These pins are quick, they're simple, they don't require a lot of expensive jewelry components, and you can probably make them using some of the scrap yarn that you've got lying around already. That said, let's grab our hooks, we'll grab our yarn, we'll head on over to the craft table, and we'll stitch it up together. We're going to begin with the earrings. So whether you're making the pumpkins or the sunflowers, the tutorials for both the appliques, the folk art pumpkin or the folk art sunflower, will be in the description box down below and also the pinned comment. You're going to want to make 2 of each, depending on which one you want to do, because you've probably got 2 ears, and you're going to want some earring backs. I find the easiest ones to manipulate are these simple little hoop earrings. They have sort of a wire that comes down and sort of turns into a little circle at the bottom. And because of that, you're going to want a pair of wire, sort of needle-nosed pliers so that you can manipulate that little ring. These are found in packages in craft supply stores like Michael's or Walmart. I've used embroidery floss for the actual crocheting. So this is just simple cotton embroidery floss, also available at a craft store or Michael's, Walmart, something like that. And a thin needle, but with an eye large enough that you can get your embroidery floss through it. That's just to weave in your little tails. You've got a pair of scissors, and the hook we're using is a 1.75 millimeter. You can also use a 2 millimeter. So this is a small little hook. This is also known as a 5 steel or a 0 in the US, possibly a size 2 steel or a size 14 if you've got old UK hooks. So either way, it's a very small little hook, but you can use whatever small steel hook size you're comfortable with in relation to the size of the embroidery floss you're using. So those are all the supplies you need in order to make the earrings. Whether you're making the pumpkins or the sunflowers from our little tutorials, either way, the only difference is that A, you're working much smaller, but B, you don't need to leave a long tail for sewing like we say to do in the tutorial. You just want to fasten off and weave in the short tails. Take a moment to make it as neat as possible on the back because the backs of your little sunflowers or pumpkins may be seen. Then all you're going to do is take your needle nose pliers, grab your earring, and you're going to just find the bit where it kind of curls around. You're going to take your needle nose pliers and just grab that little circle and gently pull it out. So you're opening up that ring. Then, keeping in mind that this goes through your ear that way, so you want the correct side of your pumpkin or your sunflower facing in the opposite direction as your little hook back. If you're doing the pumpkins, I like to put it right through the top of the little stem. So that is the right side of my pumpkin. It is facing in the opposite direction as the back of my earring. And I'm just going to take the wire and shove it through the top of the pumpkin stem. So it goes right through the top of the stem. And then I take my pliers and I take that little circle and I close it back up. And this might take a little bit of fiddling. You want to be as gentle as possible. You don't want to squish it. and you don't want to hurt the little ring. So just gently squeeze, gently squeeze. There we go. And you've closed up your little wire circle again, and your little pumpkin is sort of speared through the center of the top of the stem. So that's what you do for the little pumpkins. Same thing with the sunflowers. We're going to open up, find the top of our little loop, open it up a little bit so that we can manipulate it. This is the back of the earring going this way, so I want the front of my sunflower going this way. And I think I kind of grabbed this in-between petals for this one. So I'm going to do the same thing. You can of course use the top of a petal like we did the top of the stem for the pumpkin, but you can also go in between. I think I'll use this little spot right here. Same thing. You're just going to spear, there we go, spear the thread with the little tip of that metal ring, making sure that the front of your flower faces in the opposite direction of the back of your earring. And then we just close it up. And there's the sunflower connected. And there's the sunflower earrings and the pumpkin earrings all done. They are so cute. If you're going to make a brooch using our pumpkin or our sunflower patterns, again, the tutorials are linked down below. You can use the same hook and yarn as mentioned in the tutorial or size it down a little bit like I've done here. This is a size 3 lightweight or DK weight yarn. So just a bit smaller. You can use cotton, acrylic, wool, whatever you've got lying around, doesn't matter. And those will size down just a smidgen, especially if you use a slightly smaller hook. So this is a size 4mm, also known as a G or a 6 in the US. Pair of scissors and a yarn needle. When you make your little appliques, again, you don't need to cut a long tail for sewing because we're not actually sewing it to anything. You can just fasten off and weave in your tail, trim any excess. In order to sew the pin, and you're going to want a plain old safety pin. If you've got a brooch back, you can use that too, but safety pins work just great. And in order to sew it to the back of your actual little brooch, you're going to want some embroidery floss and a needle. You can use a needle and thread too, it's just that the embroidery floss is thicker, so you'll be sewing for less time. And in terms of how much yarn you need for each of these, you need less than 2 yards. It's a very small amount of yarn required. And once you've got that together, we can sew our pins to our brooches. There are many ways to sew a little pin to the back of a brooch. You can sew a little piece of felt over top of the edge of the pin and sew down around the felt. You could sew felt onto the back of your brooch and then sew a pin onto that. That also makes this little back part much neater. So if you wanted to add a little circle of felt, sew it down and then sew your pin to it, you could do that too. This is just sort of the quick and easy way to make a sweet little brooch. And all we're doing is using a safety pin. So you want to make sure when you go to sew your pin on that you open your safety pin up and it's the back of the safety pin that you're going to be sewing around. You want this part to be open and free so that you can actually use it to pin your little brooch to your clothing. So you're sewing around the back of the safety pin. Then all you need to do is grab your needle and thread, and I'm using again some embroidery floss. Make sure you know which is the back of your pin. So this is the back of my pin. Flip your little applique over, lay your pin down in the middle of your applique. So find about the middle, and then I like to start by picking up a little piece of the yarn and coming right through that little circular part of the needle. I don't pull my yarn all the way through. I'm going to tie a knot. So I'm just going to tie a simple knot twice, just so I know that it's not going to go anywhere. And I'm going to keep my thumb on the edge of my safety pin. I'm going to run this little tail along the edge of my pin, and I'm going to sew over top of it as I go. And all you're doing is picking up a little piece of the yarn, not going all the way through to the other side, just a little piece of the yarn. And you're going to sew around and around and around. So we're going to always go the same direction. Your yarn always goes up and over top of the pin back. And you're just grabbing little bits of the yarn as you go. You can try to keep your stitches somewhat close together. If you get all the way to the end and you don't feel like it's securely on there, you can always sort of sew all the way back again. And this is why I like to use the embroidery floss, because it makes for quicker, thicker stitches. So you can also go all the way back again if you want. Just sort of stitch back over top of the stitches you've already done. And that'll just make sure that that little pin isn't going to go anywhere, and it's certainly not going to come out. And once you get all the way back to the beginning, so it moves a little bit, so it's not in there too tight, but you can't even tell there's anything stitched to it if you look at the front. You just tie off your yarn by making a simple little knot. I always like to knot things at least twice so that I know they're not going to come undone. And then I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to weave it all the way through those stitches, maybe some of the yarn, out the other side of the head of the pin, and then I'm going to trim all of my little tails. So there's a little tail. Careful not to snip any yarn. And remember, try not to sort of poke yourself with your needle. You don't want to do that. But there we go. Now it moves around nice and neat and tidy. I can close that easily, and I can pin it to my clothes. And that is the simple and quick way to add a little pin to the back of either a pumpkin or a sunflower for a nice, cute, quick brooch. And there you go, 4 fun fall-inspired jewelry projects for you to try out this weekend using our previously recorded folk art sunflower and pumpkin applique projects. I love being able to use existing patterns in a new and fun way. I was wearing the sunflowers at the beginning. I've switched to the pumpkins now. I just think they're both so cute. And like I said before, they would all make really nice little presents for someone, especially the pins. The pins look right at home on your lapel or even a hat, backpack. You can pin them to a purse if you just sort of want to add a little bit of thematic something to whatever you happen to be wearing that day. We have a written pattern in our Etsy shop for both the sunflower and the pumpkin applique. It was part of our great big folk art calendar blanket. All of the appliques are available individually, and then of course we have the folk art blanket pattern project as its own thing. But in the applique section of our shop, we do have just the pattern for the pumpkins and the sunflowers. So if you want to pick that up, you're more than welcome to, and it does help us out, so thank you very much. And if you're the type who are into journaling your projects, we also have printable, downloadable project journal kits available in our Etsy shop as well. They can get you started. They're based on a 3-ring binder, so once again, nothing super fancy or expensive to get you started. And this is the kind of project or projects that you would want to add to that kind of project journal entry. So you do an entry on, say, your folk art blanket, or maybe that little applique of the pumpkins and the sunflowers, and in your notes page you'd include some photographs and some information about the kinds of hook sizes and little odds and ends that you might want to need for making earrings or pins, the kind of yarn you used, that sort of thing. That's the kind of thing you would put into a project journal entry, and you get more out of a pattern. So once again, we've got the pattern and the project journal kits available in our Etsy shop if you want to pick one out and help us out. We really appreciate it, and the link to our shop will be down below. We hope you have a very crafty weekend ahead of you, and that you enjoyed making some jewelry along with us today. We will see you soon here on the Jayda and Stitches show. Until then, stay safe, stay crafty, have an awesome week. Bye everybody!
Hi everybody, Mr. InStitches here. Thank you for watching today. Here are some of our other videos you might be interested in. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe.